A word of warning, this podcast explores graphic and disturbing stories and includes some strong language. It therefore may not be suitable for our young listeners or other folks who may find it disturbing. Hello and welcome to True Crime News, the podcast covering high-profile and under-the-radar cases from across the country every week. I'm your host, Ana Garcia. Our case this week: the agony of murder. A mother of four has been missing for a year and presumed dead. Police say she was murdered by her jealous husband. He stands accused of killing her, but her body's never been found. The case itself is disturbing enough, but now the distraught sister of the murder victim has apparently gone too far with a vendetta against the family of the alleged killer, according to police. The sister is accused of harassing his family. She's upset, lashing out because she wants justice for her sister, and she wants to find her sister's body. It's a new complication to a murder case that's been making headlines. We're recording this on Friday, October 17th of 2025. Our guest today is Phillip Hamilton, a civil and criminal attorney based in New York, a legal analyst, a dear friend of the show. Phillip, you've been so busy we haven't been able to see you on the show in forever. Welcome back.
Anna, as we were saying, it's been way too long, but couldn't be happier to be back with you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We always love your commentary and perspective here. So we are talking about the case of Suzanne Simpson. We've talked about it before on the podcast. Her husband, Brad, is accused of killing her. Body never been found. And while we now await for the murder trial, apparently it's been set for February, Suzanne's sister is now in trouble. Serious trouble, say police, for allegedly harassing Brad's family. It's wrong. It's against the law. But Phillip, there is a part of me that feels her anguish. She wants justice for her sister. She's in pain, and she's presumably lashing out at those that she thinks either can help her or she wants them to feel her pain.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially that latter part, right? When you're dealing with that pain, whether she's therapeutically worked through it or not, like that is a release that has to happen. And to the extent that you can put it to the origin of where you feel as though that pain is coming from, that's probably underlying a lot of what she has done. To your point, not all the way objectionably correct, but at the same time, certainly understandable.
What do you think happens in a case like this if they, we'll get into some of the alleged evidence that police have. I mean, what do you do with something as complicated as this? Do you think that there is compassion for her or, the law's the law, lady?
They're not always mutually exclusive. So the law can be the law, but there certainly can be compassion that's intertwined within it. And I think no matter how this ultimately plays out regarding, the full investigation, regarding the full outcome of the case, at the end of the day, we can all understand where she's coming from. I don't think it's coming from a place of just reckless, malicious intent. It really is coming from a place of just pain crying out.
I'm always surprised when survivors or family members of the victims can show restraint. I'm always shocked at that. I'm surprised we don't see more people lunging at each other in court.
Yeah, I mean, these are emotionally charged places. I mean, these courtrooms where you're dealing with these horrendous crimes. I mean, as you can imagine, I've been there. I've seen it. I felt it, right? Like the tension a lot of times is palpable. So, for those who can respect the court's decorum and, respect the process and go all the way through without jumping over into the well of the courtroom and attacking people, which we know happens, but to the, where you have people that can actually refrain from doing that, the levels of restraint, I don't even think you and I would have a word for.
No, and I'm not sure that I could do it.
Right.
I just don't know if I could do that. So, the question we're asking, we're going to get into Suzanne's case, is like, so what do we do with this? What do we do with this family member who's clearly in anguish? Clearly, there's a lot we don't know. I don't know what's going to happen to her. We're going to get into the details of what she's allegedly done. So the basis of the murder case, though, is 51-year-old Suzanne Simpson, a mother of four. She disappeared from a suburb of San Antonio, Texas on October 6th of 2024. about a year ago. This was after a fight with her husband, Brad Simpson, who's 54. They were married for 22 years. She was a luxury real estate agent. He was in real estate development. They lived a privileged life in an exclusive enclave, and they had everything you could possibly imagine but apparently not happiness. So,
How many times have we dealt with that as an underlying theme whenever you and I are having these discussions?
yes. And that is why, I always try and do a spectrum of cases with people from all walks of life, because when you see someone who has the means, the money, the access, the ability to handle a situation, and it ends up, as police say in this case, murder, really, you had all the tools and the avenues for it not to end this way.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the underlying theme also is just sometimes when you do have all of the resources and you do have all of, societally, what should be had from a material possession standpoint. Sometimes once you get all of those things, but you still realize that it's not equating to happiness, that is historically when you and I have started to have discussions on some of these, more unfortunate cases.
And this is sad. I mean, because we have 4 children who have been left traumatized. Mother is missing, presumed dead. Father accused of killing her. And the children are ranging in ages from, well, the 5 and the 15-year-old were living at home, and the 18 and the 20-year-old were out. But I'm sorry, even if you're 20 years old, your mother is murdered and your father stands accused. I don't know who has the wherewithal to process this.
It's 2 losses, right? Like it's 2 losses within the same incident. And, to be that young and to deal with that level of, I mean, I don't want to be redundant here already, but that trauma, I don't even know if it's the right word, when you're essentially losing 2 parents and then one that you may resent for the rest of your life, depending on, again, how this investigation plays out or what those initial beliefs may have been, on the child's part. It's unimaginable. And it's certainly something that you and I would never want to deal with personally. It's hard enough to talk about these cases.
It is. It is disturbing. So Brad was arrested 1 month after Suzanne went missing and then indicted on murder charges. Of course, so far there are no clues as to where Suzanne's body may be. And of course, Brad says that he is innocent and he is presumed innocent. He has a right, to prove himself innocent. There's some challenging evidence here and some witnesses. One witness as tiny as 5, the 5-year-old who presumably saw some things and then shared it with someone at school. So that's part of how people started piecing this together. But before we get into all the details of Suzanne's murder, I just wanted to give you the broad strokes there. So now we can understand what is happening with Suzanne's sister, Teresa Clark. She's been charged with harassment after allegedly conducting what the police say a vigorous media campaign against Brad Simpson's relatives. Teresa allegedly made repeated calls to Brad's family members, often after midnight, and leaving messages with warnings such as, quote, "You don't know who you're messing with. You will not get away with this."
It leaves you in a place where, again, we can understand it. But as I said earlier, the law and emotion aren't always mutually exclusive. So we can understand why you're doing what you're doing, but it may not necessarily preclude an arrest, which is exactly what happened here with her.
Yeah. Police say that she contacted at least 4 of Brad's relatives despite warnings from police. And I'm wondering if legally that's going to be the key here, because if she initially started this and then police warned her, perhaps from a point or in perspective of understanding, okay,
yep,
look, we know you're suffering, but you can't do this. Legally, for her case, if that indeed happened, that she got a kind but firm warning not to do this again, and then maybe allegedly continued, what does that mean?
I mean, it means you're on notice, right? So, it certainly can't be said that I did this by mistake or that this was something that I didn't understand would, amount to the level of a crime. But, and again, at the end of the day, and she probably did the calculation herself, no matter where she may have been emotionally. But you and I know she's not going to do 2, 3, 4, 5 years or anything along. It's going to be, if at worst, a slap on the wrist. And I think for her, it's probably frustrating when you think that the other family is just over there, either not taking this seriously or that there's not going to be any accountability. And, the process, as we know within the criminal justice system, it is a slow, antagonizingly slow process at times trying to get from point A to justice. Right. And, I think sometimes for lay people, it's hard for lawyers at times going through the process, but certainly for like lay people, the fact that this guy isn't already, locked up for life, convicted of it's not enough. Right. And so even if the police are doing their job, the courts are doing their job, it's probably very difficult not to just pick up that phone and just, let what is up here out on the people who, even if they aren't directly responsible, they're the people who you can get in touch with.
Yeah, and one of the complications, and we'll get into that when we get deeper into Suzanne's case, is that Brad's own brother, after Suzanne went missing, but before he was arrested, made some very public statements about his, demanding his brother come clean about what he knew and what happened, putting public pressure on his own brother. I would think that would send a message to Suzanne's family. Look, we loved Suzanne. We don't think this is okay. We want to find her and we want justice. So that I find fascinating. If this family had only said, no, he's a prince, but that does not appear to be the case.
Yeah, and I think so. Even if we, take the brother's statements at their full worth, which I think what we're saying here is that it would be, I don't know if refreshing is the right word, but it's much better than just this never happened. Our son could never do something like this. My brother could never do something like this. We ultimately pray that Suzanne's found, but clearly, our family member had nothing to do with it. Yeah, that could be a bit frustrating. It would underlie some of those calls, but even with those statements, wherein you have some understanding, there's still sometimes just that natural human inclination for revenge and retribution. And again, if she hasn't worked all of that through therapeutically on her own, these are the kinds of things that happen.
Yeah. We don't usually see this. This is what's so interesting. And for it to come to charges, she was arrested on 4 counts of harassment. Teresa was arrested on October 2nd of this, just a few weeks ago. And, that's really serious. She ends up apparently spending 2 days in jail before she is released, according to media outlets who have been covering this. So this is the latest development in the case. And I just have to think that this is adding a tremendous amount of stress to one person, Suzanne and Teresa's mother. She has one daughter who is dead. And now she's got another daughter who's facing criminal charges. If I were the mother, I don't think I'd be able to contain myself.
Yeah, I think, clearly the focus is just always going to be like, what specifically happened to Suzanne? Where is she? I mean, that's going to be the primary focus. But, also when you're already trying to deal with that unimaginable level of sadness and stress and despair, and then you're dealing with your other daughter who's now kind of caught up in the criminal justice system as a direct result of, essentially the death of your other daughter. I can't imagine that either.
No, and I want to be clear, I'm not defending Teresa's alleged actions here, but I am I want to have a conversation, and I know we'll have this on YouTube, about, everyone's got a breaking point. And is there some level of compassion and understanding about how when a murder occurs, we always focus on one part of it, but this is the fallout and what can happen as a result of this, especially they've all been together for 22 years. These two families have been joined.
Right.
So, I know it's an aside from the murder case, and I'm just wondering, Phillip, because we're going to move on to Suzanne's case now, how does Brad in any way use this, either in his defense or does it have no bearing on his case?
I can't imagine how he wouldn't. I've been doing this work for, well over 17 years, but to think about how your alleged actions potentially split up these families, put your children in this unimaginable situation. Your sister-in-law is now, essentially dealing with a case hanging over her head. I don't know if, strategically, and look, I guess if Teresa were to come in and at some point testify against him as the investigation continues to unfold, I mean, are there areas there clearly where you could maybe, attack her for being emotionally biased and closed off, to maybe there being other, reasons as to why Suzanne ended up missing? Sure. But I don't think that's the primary focus of a strong defense here.
Yeah, yeah. But I could see where it would weaken it some. One of the things I've realized is that home security isn't just about protecting things. It is about protecting people. For me, it's my family, pets, even my car that I want to feel safe. That's why I'm so excited to partner with Simply Safe. I love how customizable Simply Safe is. I've got cameras and entry sensors on the doors and windows, but there's also water sensors and smoke and CO2 detectors in the kitchen. And with the app, I can arm or disarm the system, check camera feeds, and manage every feature from anywhere. Seriously. Full control right from my phone. And the best part, no long-term contracts. Monitoring plans start at about $1 a day, and it's easy to install. There's also a professional installation option if you prefer that. Plus, Simply Safe has been recognized by U.S. News, Newsweek, and USA Today for top customer service and being the best home security system. I also added Active Guard outdoor protection. Unlike old school alarms that only go off after a break-in, Active Guard can stop crime before it happens. AI-powered cameras alert monitoring agents to suspicious activity, trigger alarms, spotlights, and even request police dispatch if needed, all while ignoring familiar faces like neighbors or your dog walker. And because I want you to have the same peace of mind I do, save 50% on your Simply Safe security system when you sign up for a professional monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplysafe.com/true crime to customize yours. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Okay, so let's talk about Suzanne Simpson. This is a woman who allegedly told her banker 1 year before she disappeared, if anything ever happened to me, look for me in a lake. Who says that? Who says that?
Right.
It's just weird. That isn't even funny.
Even forget the lake part, but just let's just go back to the core of that statement. You have a recognition that your doom may be impending. Like that in and of itself is troubling. That in and of itself is like a signal and a communication that there are signs that I may not be here for much longer. And if that's what you're already thinking based on what's going on, then certainly when something does happen to you, that's going to turn up a lot of radars, like right to where we're all kind of looking and having this discussion now.
I think it's telegraphing a lot of information about how Suzanne felt about her safety.
Yeah, 100%.
So when Suzanne did not show up at school to pick up her daughter, the 5-year-old, everyone knew something was wrong here, and soon police would uncover that Suzanne and Brad had had a fight the night before. A fight which was witnessed. It ends up being 2 fights, actually, in 2 different locations. And again, both of them witnessed. So let's get to the night of the fight. Suzanne was last seen alive on October 6th of 2024 after attending a party at the Argyle, which is a private dining club in San Antonio. It's a historic ranch built in 1854. This is old money. This is privilege. Suzanne and Brad attended the party with their 5-year-old daughter. Brad and Suzanne end up having a fight there. And, then they all decide to leave. But not everybody goes together. Police say that Suzanne left the Argyle at 8:30 that night with her daughter and went to a local grocery store. And based on cell phone data, they were there until 8:51. And from there, they went home. And that is when the fight either picks up again or is a different fight. But this is the one that apparently becomes very dangerous. According to police, Suzanne reached out to a friend at about 9:15 p.m. that evening before heading to the friend's home. A minute after Suzanne made that call, she calls her mother. And her mother says that Suzanne told her that Brad had assaulted her, hurt her arm, her back, and her neck. And police believe the 5-year-old witnessed this. Suzanne's mother, Barbara Clark, she told police that Suzanne, when she shared what had happened to her, and then the mom's processing this, they hang up, and then the mother says she tries to call her right back and can't get through. And then the mother shared with police that the reason she was calling Suzanne back was to tell her that she had a plan. She had a solution, that she was going to tell Suzanne, please come to my house, stay here, bring the kids. And the mother says, because she never answered the phone, she never heard my plan. That's heartbreaking.
When you think that you have the solution, I mean, we're both parents, Anna. So, that core instinctual, drive to make sure that your children are okay. I mean, it's already probably hard enough to hear that first call, but then you try to, get a plan together to, be able to effectuate your child's safety, and then to never hear from your child again. That's tough.
A key part of the evidence here in investigation is what exactly happened to Suzanne's cell phone, and here is why. Mom can't reach her, right? So something happens. Now, Suzanne's cell phone service, there are a few versions of what happened here, and they could all actually be possible. Her cell phone service was disconnected, police say, at the request of the account subscriber, according to AT&T. This is in the affidavit. Police say that Brad used the app to turn off the service, okay? Now, when police question Brad about Suzanne's disappearance, he tells them Suzanne lost her phone at the grocery store. Now, if that were possibly true, then you could understand why he would disconnect the service, right? Because that would make sense.
Right.
However, according to the family, they have a group Find My Phone option where they all can trace each other. And according to that feature, Suzanne's phone was last seen pinged alive working at the family home. Is that strong evidence at all?
Okay, so when you start to talk about cell site location evidence, which is exactly what this is, the answer is it depends. Because what I'll tell you is, when you're using your phone at any given point, right, this is pinging off of various towers. No different when we're driving. We see those cell phone towers. It's pinging off of towers that provide the strongest signal. So what I'm trying to say here, Anna, is there are times where there may be a cell tower that's close to you, but it's not providing the strongest signal for whatever given reason. Whether maybe it's a weather-related event, maybe there's some kind of obstruction within your backyard, some kind of tree or something that's like blocking the signal from being as strong as maybe a tower that's a little bit further away. So the larger answer to your question becomes kind of what is the density layout of the neighborhood with which they live in, the town with which they live in, and the city with which they live in. Because what I'll always tell you is, say here in New York, where I practice, right, particularly in the city, it's very difficult to ping exactly where a phone is because there are multiple cell towers all over these apartment buildings. And it is a very dense, closely, located population. We're all on top of each other, right? In the more rural areas or in the more suburban areas, it is a little bit easier to say, okay, the last tower that this pinged off of was closer to the grocery store as opposed to it being closer to the home. If the one that it pinged off was much closer to the home, such that the tower that's close to the grocery store really wouldn't be able to have the signal to even reach where she was at home, he's dealing with a big problem, because I don't know how you answer that, right? So what I'm trying to tell you is, like, from a defense standpoint, there are certainly ways with which you can challenge cell site location data, and you can always challenge it to say, it's never going to give you a specific, this phone was in Phillip's hand at the time that he was speaking to Ana in his home office. You're never going to be able to get that crystal clear detail, but you can certainly get the details quite relative to the general area of where I am, if that makes sense.
It does. So here's the next question then, which I think complicates things and certainly doesn't make things look good for Brad. According to friends of Suzanne, Brad would take away Suzanne's phone as a form of control, and apparently had done this a few times before this evening. And police say that they even uncovered a text from Brad's phone supporting this as a behavior. Now, you could be, basically a jerk, right? Taking your wife's phone or her privilege or the use of the phone, which is kind of ridiculous if you have small children. But okay, there's being a jerk, and then there's like being covering up a crime. Those are two ends here. I think jerk for sure fits in.
I mean, which also, those aren't mutually exclusive either.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's just.
It's just like, do not do this to your wife when you have small children, that all need to be contacted. It's just not wise. Let's get back to the night of Suzanne's disappearance. Suzanne arrived at her friend's house at 9:25. And according to police, Suzanne was back home about 10 p.m. And this is when a neighbor hears and sees something. The witness told police that Brad and Suzanne were outside their home physically fighting. Suzanne was allegedly able to break free from Brad. He ran after her, tried to grab her, and the neighbor says that they went back into their home to grab a flashlight. And somewhere in that process, the neighbor says, I lost sight of them and what was going on. However, the neighbor says that they heard screams coming from a wooded area bordering the Simpson home, and that about an hour after that incident, the neighbor claims that they heard Brad's truck start up, leave, and then return an hour later. And no one sees Suzanne again. So let's look at the timeline according to police. At 7:53 a.m. on October 7th, this would be the next morning, Brad's truck is seen on surveillance at the daughter's school, dropping off the 5-year-old, and then police say he used the rest of the day to cover up his crime. An hour after the school drop-off, at 9:12 a.m., Brad's truck is captured on a camera through the drive-thru at a Whataburger restaurant. Okay, why is this interesting? Because police say they can see things in the truck from this vantage point. They claim that there were 3 trash bags, a heavy-duty trash can, a bulky item that was wrapped and secured in a blue tarp with a metal firewood rack placed over it, either to keep it from view or, police speculate, maybe to keep the tarp from flying off. And according to the affidavit, police used cell phone data then to keep tracking where he allegedly went. At a later point, Phillip, and we'll get to it, this stuff, when the vehicle is seen again, is no longer in the vehicle. Is there much to surmise here?
I mean, circumstantially, I think there's a lot to surmise. And, what we can say is it doesn't look good for Brad's defense. And it looks very much circumstantially as though he's trying to get rid of a body, or he's trying to get rid of tools that may have been used to kill a body, especially when you put that in conjunction with the screams. Like the witness account, I think more so even than the Whataburger video, that's heavy. Right? Like, that's heavy. The seeing them fighting, the hearing the screams, no one ever hears or sees from her again. Even if he doesn't go through the drive-through, he has problems. But now he's going through the drive-through. These things are seen, and then later they're not seen. I mean, circumstantially, there's a reason why he's sitting in jail on a $3 million bond.
Yes, there is. And one thing that really creeps me out is we don't know what's in those bags and that trash can and under that tarp. But if that 5-year-old was driven to school with her mother or parts of her mother in the back of that truck, I just want to vomit.
I mean, just think, if you want to vomit, just think about yourself like on that jury, right? I mean, what else? We'll continue to talk, clearly for the rest of the show, but just for Brad, his entire defense just has to be like, oh, this is circumstantial, primarily just because they don't have a body, right? So if he just wants to say, like, they got into a fight, she ran off, he has no idea what happened to her, subsequent, sure, you could say it. But, I don't know how much that chips away at the fact that even at this juncture, you and I kind of talking it out, we're seeing how the prosecution is starting to build their case beyond a reasonable doubt. It's tough. Like I've been in these situations, Anna, where you're getting a case from the inception and you can just see, and you can have conversations with your client. Not only is this an uphill battle, it's not even worth climbing up the mountain. It's not even worth taking the first step, because we're at a point now where maybe we need to just start thinking about mitigating your sentence, right? Like we need to start to explain how things got out of control, what psychiatrically and psychologically is going on with you such that you can't control your emotions. I mean, that's a lot of times the conversations you have to have when you're starting to see evidence like this already at the inception. These are the conversations you have to have with your clients. It's not looking good for Brad.
No. And it's going to get worse as we continue. So one of the things that police have said is that Brad was doing something with his phone where he was cycling it on and off in order, I guess, to keep from sending data. What confuses me about this, and until we actually get to the trial or more evidence, alleged evidence is released, is why not just have your phone off? What is the point of on and off? Because that to me sounds like a risky thing to do, but I guess it's possible he needed to contact some people in the middle. I don't know. I just find that one, best thing is to be off.
I mean, but Anna, maybe like when you're in this level of, potential culpability, I'll put it to you like this. You and I were having some discussions. I've tried a couple of lengthy cases over the course of the last year, like 2 5-week trials. The second one I tried this past summer, one of the co-defendants had done just that, like exactly what you just said. He turned the phone off, but he turned the phone off for the very specific period that the alleged conduct was occurring. And then on the other side of like said conduct, when it was all said and done, his phone miraculously comes back on. So there was no on and off like during the period. But again, circumstantially, I mean, the government was really on that particular co-defendant. They were hitting hard on, look, we get sometimes phones turn off. We get people don't charge their phone. That's all fine and well. But what's the coincidence on top of all the other coincidences that it just happened to be off for this set period of time, which during that set period of time, we're telling you our theory of the case and what we think this co-defendant did. It could be the same thing with respect to Brad. So sometimes when you're this deep into your own culpability and your own bad decisions, whether you turn it off and you turn it back on, whether you keep it off, again, he's having problems just from the fact that he's fighting with Suzanne in the front yard for everybody to, see and hear. Screams. That witness is his problem. The turning the phone off and on, it's just another circumstantial building block that the prosecution can use.
Let's get on to how things get worse here. So after the Whataburger stop, Brad allegedly drove to Home Depot and reportedly purchased 2 bags of concrete, he is in real estate development.
So again, as a defense attorney, that's an area where, when you're giving your opening argument, you do make mention of that. Hey, this is just circumstantial. He's in real estate development. It's not uncommon for him to, go to Home Depot, purchase these types of items. But also, again, it's just another coincidence on top of another coincidence. At a certain point, it's just not a coincidence. That's correct. The issue.
And I don't believe in coincidences, especially when it comes to murder cases.
I think we've talked about that before. You're not a coincidence fan. No,
not for murder. Maybe for just random things in life, sure. In life, yeah, but not murder. So purchased 2 bags of concrete, a Home Depot construction bucket with a lid, a box of heavy-duty trash bags, insect repellent, and a 30-ounce bottle of Clorox spray. Police were able to obtain a copy of the receipt, even though it was paid for by cash. You
had me at the insect repellent. That's like all of that's a problem. The insect repellent is a huge problem for obvious reasons.
That's so interesting.
Obvious reasons, right? Like trying to keep like the flies and the mag, like all of that stuff away. That's a
yeah, true. Or unless you're someone like me who constantly gets bitten, if I were the perpetrator, I would be using the insect repellent on myself during the commission of the burial or the disposal of the body. That would just be me. Because we all have sensitivities. Now, while in the Home Depot parking lot, this one is actually unbelievably ridiculous. Police say Brad asked someone for directions to the nearest dump because his phone, obviously, he has it off. But here's the problem. The person remembers Brad asking them for directions to the dump, plus license plate readers capture Brad allegedly traveling to and from that dump site.
Again, you're not a coincidence fan when it comes to murder, so add that piece as well.
Yes. Well, I think we always rely so heavily on the forensics and the DNA evidence. And here you have witnesses that are giving you pieces of a narrative, if you will, the story of what happened. And
uninterested witnesses.
Yes.
Completely random. Yeah.
This person doesn't know. This person doesn't care. It's like, oh, and it's not a crazy question if you're at a Home Depot to ask where the dump is. Like, that is a very reasonable question to ask and would not seem like much until then you later realize, hey, wait a second. I recognize this guy.
Exactly.
So at 4:07 p.m., surveillance footage allegedly captures Brad in his truck at the Bubble Bath Car Wash in San Antonio. Blue tarp firewood rack, gone.
What time did you say, Anna?
4:07 p.m. 4
Okay.
p.m. Police say that he washed the vehicle, paying close attention to the driver's front side and rear passenger's side of the vehicle. Authorities claim that they later located dried cement splashes in both of those places. Well, is that really unusual if we know that he bought cement? Unless they're looking forensically for blood or any kind of DNA of Suzanne. But however, here's the other thing. If you've been married for 22 years, presumably Suzanne's DNA is going to be all over his vehicle, vice versa. It's everywhere, unless it's a lot of blood. And then that would be weird.
That's the issue. It's not the DNA. It would be blood.
Correct. So when Suzanne did not pick up the 5-year-old, remember, this was the trigger for everybody else in Suzanne's family and world, friends became very nervous. And a friend contacted Brad on that evening, this is October 7th, saying they're worried, like, where's Suzanne? Have you called the police? And he hadn't called the police. So apparently the friend calls the police to say that Suzanne is missing. And that would have happened at 10:57 p.m., at 9:57 p.m. So almost 10 p.m. is when the friend reports Suzanne missing. Brad had not. But after this conversation, Brad decides, well, I guess I better make a call myself, and does something interesting. He leaves voicemail for the police chief, informing him that his wife is missing. Is that who you usually call? Do you just leave a VM, hey, Suzanne's missing? I guess if you know the police chief really well, that's what I was about
to ask. But even if you know the police chief very well, then use that connection much earlier than 10 p.m. the following day after screams were heard in the woods. Start with that. Most of us would just think to just call 911 or just to run down to the precinct and immediately start to get some assistance. But yeah, in terms of just like leaving a voicemail or just a text like, hey, dealing with a little issue over here, get back at your convenience, or who knows what he wrote. But like relatively, it's always going to amount to that. If you weren't running to that precinct the moment, again, that your 5-year-old wasn't picked up, right, and you weren't calling 911, you might as well have just done what I alluded to, right? So I think that's a problem.
Also, there are some discrepancies, according to the authorities. Brad told police that he hadn't seen his wife since around 11 p.m. on the 6th. That would be the night after that fight, after they went out that night. Okay, and he said he saw her in the family home. That would line up with the family's, group Find My Phone, right? That was the last time her phone pinged there. But there's a conflict really with what he told the police chief, which was something else. He told the police chief that he hadn't seen his wife since the next morning of October 7th, where we see him at Whataburger, we see him at Home Depot, all that. So he says he last saw his wife that morning at 6:30 a.m. As he was leaving to drop off the 5-year-old at school. How would you not know when you last saw your wife if your wife has disappeared? How do you not know that? That's really suspicious to me. You're telling police two radically different versions of what.
I mean, especially when you're not separated, you know what I mean? You guys are still living in the same home. Like that's, I know when I last saw my wife.
Yes,
right?
of
I can't
course you
tell
do.
you exactly what time it was this morning, but it was definitely this morning. You know what I mean? So yes.
Yeah, and if she were missing, you would rack your brain to figure it out, every clue, and say, I can narrow it down to this window, because it's very unusual for your wife to be missing. So let's talk about the tiniest of the witnesses here, the 5-year-old. Allegedly, the daughter told a school counselor that she had witnessed the fight between her mother and father. The child allegedly told this school employee that her dad pushed her mom against the wall. The little girl told the adult, hit mommy in the face and hurt Suzanne's elbow. The girl allegedly told police that Brad had turned off Suzanne's cell phone because they were fighting. Now, doesn't that all bring everything full circle?
I mean, from a circumstantial standpoint, we almost now start to get more into, the direct evidence, right? Because like you're saying, it's that puzzle is coming together. There's a lot of pieces, but that's a big one.
And I believe the 5-year-old.
I mean, listen, with respect to, witnesses, like let's say like at a trial or what have you, there's always going to be a bit of question just in regards to, a child's ability to perceive and their ability to like consistently, reflect the truth and state the truth. But I'll certainly say this, even if there may be issues with a 5-year-old testifying and whether that makes sense or not, certainly for the purposes of the investigation, that is very damning, very damning.
Because the little girl told someone at school the next morning before anyone really knew that Suzanne was missing. It's not like the girl was interrogated by police, in which, of course, they would do that very carefully to not cause further trauma. But that, to me, feels very authentic, very genuine, that a child is worried, tells someone who is a mandatory reporter about something going on here. That, to me, that is huge. That and the witness who heard the screaming, and then the guy in the parking lot at Home Depot, not as strong as these two, and then what Suzanne told the friend, told her mother, it's all lining up. And it would be really hard to imagine that Suzanne could have conspired to arrange all of these stories just to set up Brad. I don't see it.
Yeah. Or like run away into some other life or something. And then, the other, variable of, what was seen in the car at the Whataburger, right? So, all of those things in line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you think about it, there isn't just one money goal. I've been saving for retirement. Thank goodness my son's already done with college, but there's always something that I'm saving for. Well, today's podcast is sponsored by Acorns. Acorns is the financial wellness app that helps you invest for your future, save for tomorrow, and spend smarter today. It makes it easy to start doing more with your money, even rounding up your spare change to invest automatically. Acorns puts everything into an expert-built portfolio so you're investing wisely, not wildly. I know investing can be confusing at times. There's no one way to do it, and there's no rule book that you must follow. That's one of the reasons I like Acorns. It makes investing simple. Sign up now and Acorns will boost your new account with a $5 bonus investment. Join the over 14 million all-time customers who have already saved and invested over $25 billion with Acorns. Head to acorns.com/TCN or download the Acorns app to get started. Paid non-client endorsement. Compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 2 compensation provided. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors, LLC is an SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/TCN. Police say that Brad made some additional attempts to conceal whatever evidence there may have been from this crime. Allegedly on October 8th, Brad texted with his business associate, a man named James Cotter, who now stands accused of helping Brad conceal firearms. The text exchange reportedly occurred at 4:35 p.m. and goes as follows. So this is now Brad. Brad says, "If you're in Bandera, can you haul ass and meet me at your house? I don't have much time." According to the affidavit, James allegedly responds, "I'll be there in 40 minutes. Brad allegedly adds, "Okay, make sure and leave all that shit into the pump house, especially the gun." Why would you tell your friend to hide a gun just on the day or 2 days after your wife is missing?
Right. I don't have the answer for that. And that's, again, one of those things that, I'm looking at that initial case file, like on day one, I can't even conceive what the proper answer would be outside of the fact that nothing you say is not going to lead me to believe that this isn't a cover up or a part, again, of the rest of your plan to get away with this. So why don't we just have the come to Jesus moment now and start to work on how to potentially mitigate your sentence? Again, I don't know if he's death eligible, if it's a capital related offense that they may move on at a certain point. But to the extent that it's not, he needs to be focusing on, is there any potential salvation toward the end of his life? And if there's going to be, we got to start working on that now.
It does add a lot of clarity as to why the police have charged him and why he's being held on such high bail.
100%.
It certainly is making sense. Then these two reportedly texted a little later at 8:31 p.m. and police say that James texted Brad this: "Get over here. I won't tell anyone. You're my brother." My guess is James, who's facing his own legal issues, if James tells the authorities what happened, allegedly, isn't it conceivable that James knows where Suzanne is?
It's conceivable. I mean, like you said, he's dealing with his own quasi-accessory, type of legal issues. And, at a certain point, are they going to come to him and just say, like, look, you're dealing with your own issues, you're leveraged yourself. Don't get yourself much further caught up in Brad's own decision making. We can give you this opportunity to save yourself, but you're going to have to give us some information. And maybe that is when it comes up. So it's certainly conceivable, Anna, that he would know. And even if he didn't specifically know, where exactly, her remains are, he still may be able to give more information that, again, is another circumstantial block to just basically boxing Brad into, there's no way that you can get out of this, right? You did it, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. We don't know what James knows and what part James played in any of this. If he did, presumed innocent. It's not like he was seen in any of these surveillance videos on the day after the fight. So there's no reason to believe that he was there disposing of the body, but we don't know what he knows. And hopefully he will share this, because I think that would certainly be the right thing to do. Now, on October 9th, police arrested Brad on counts of assault, family violence, and unlawful restraint. According to authorities, Brad did not appear surprised and never questioned why he was being arrested. And police say he had multiple bruises on his hands and arms. I mean, if someone came to arrest me and my partner, my significant other, my husband, my wife were missing, and you're arresting me and I had nothing to do with it, I'd probably throw a fit.
I think he's just exercising that Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, right?
True. Later that day, police served a search warrant on the Simpson family home and a property owned by Brad in Bandera. Bandera being the place where he asked his friend to haul ass to get to. At the home, authorities claimed that they found a wall with some damage, which would corroborate the little girl's claims about where and how Daddy hit Mommy. On the Bandera property, police say they located a ground-level burn site where they allegedly located a burnt laptop, multiple cell phone devices, cellular devices, including 3 phones, and they say they all belong to Brad. They were able to somehow scrape out 2 notes allegedly found on one of the cell phones that included apologies for physically assaulting his wife back in August of 2023, a year before she disappeared, and then again on October 6th. That's interesting. I mean, okay, so he's apologizing for it. Okay. Then on October 21st, okay, remember, we're still in the month that Suzanne disappeared here. James Cotter, the business associate, was arrested and charged with tampering with evidence and possessing a prohibited weapon. Police say they recovered an AK-47, allegedly belonging to Brad, on James's property, and that the weapon was allegedly hidden behind a wall mount for a television and fitted with a string to retrieve it.
So was it like it was behind the drywall, or it was in between the TV and the drywall?
It's from my understanding, it was, you know how you have those giant mounts, those brackets on the wall? I think it was literally behind the TV, between the TV and the drywall, and then there was a string. I'm fascinated by the string.
That's strange. But not strange when we're coupling everything else that we've coupled together throughout the last hour that we've been talking. It sounds more like a plan and a conspiracy. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. Now, authorities claim that the weapon was illegally modified to fire automatically. James has since been released on a bond after his bail was lowered from $1 million to $100,000. Okay, so that seems to be the evidence. Now I want to talk a little bit back to the family and what's going on here, because really this brings us back to the sister in many ways. Town and Country magazine did a fascinating article when this first happened. And they say, and this was reported by other media outlets, that 10 days after Suzanne disappeared, remember we talked about Brad's brother Barton wrote a public post on Facebook. And he said, until Brad chooses to cooperate, we will continue to cooperate for him, as we have from the very beginning of this heartbreaking ordeal, he wrote. This is not how he was raised, and this is not who we are. And he finished it by writing, and we will not rest until we find Suzanne. Very bold on the brother's part. The right thing to do.
Sure.
So that would certainly, I think, send a message to Suzanne's family that, you know, the Simpsons do not agree with this, and we are in support of finding our treasured Suzanne. Now let's talk about the kids. Brad and Suzanne's daughter, Chandler Simpson, who is the oldest of the children, has been very outspoken. According to Town and Country, in early November, this is a month before Suzanne went missing, Chandler posted a series of stories on her Instagram directly implicating her father. This is before Suzanne disappears. And this is what she wrote. They quoted directly. My mom was a victim of abuse from my father. My father took my mother's life in a state of rage and control. This would have been obviously after Suzanne disappeared. She continued, and those who chose to remain silent are choosing to blind themselves from domestic violence in our homes. My mom tried to leave my father and lost her life. No one else has said that. I think the daughter knows a lot. I think she knows a lot.
I mean, she's just corroborating like what for us, I don't even want to say it's like the elephant in the room, right? But like, we were already thinking that anyway. I mean, from whenever we initially started talking about him taking her phone, the daughter's just saying like what we're all thinking. But the fact is, it's the daughter that's saying it. So it's all the more powerful and compelling. Now
you have 2 daughters.
Yeah.
A 5-year-old and a 20-year-old.
Right.
Who are providing a lot of evidence, I think. You know, the other thing she did, and it's very interesting, and, you know, I think Chandler makes a great point here. And Chandler had been living away from the house. She had been studying fashion in New York and Paris. But Chandler put a lot of blame and responsibility on her parents' community, the, wealthy neighborhood where they lived, the people that they went to the club with, the people in their world, for, in many ways, not standing up here if and when they saw anything wrong. She's a young person, and who knows how strong her voice would have been, but one expects an adult to know a little bit more about what's right and wrong. So I don't necessarily blame Chandler at all. And for heaven's sakes, her mother is dead and her father is accused of killing her. Then on November 7th, so this is a month later, Brad is finally charged with Suzanne's murder. A grand jury returned indictments for multiple charges, including murder. In the supporting paperwork for the indictment, prosecutors noted another piece of alleged evidence. According to authorities, they located a saw at Brad's that apparently he was trying to conceal, and they say tested positive for Suzanne's blood. Nail in the coffin.
Yeah. Or body parts, unfortunately, in the trash bag or the trash can that was seen in the truck from the Whataburger, right? Like, which then goes back to your point that, yeah, if there was any part of Suzanne in that vehicle on that morning ride to school, this guy there may not be any mitigation for him. You know what I mean? Like, no matter what was going on with him, nobody may honor it. That's bad.
Yeah. And look, the worst thing is killing someone's mother, right? I mean, he's accused.
Her own child's mother on top of it.
His own child's mother. But then the idea of this innocent little kid riding happily off to school, maybe with mommy in the back of the truck, I can't.
Nor can I.
I just can't. So Brad remains in custody on a $3 million bond. In December of last year, he received, this is interesting, limited permission to write supervised letters to his 15-year-old child. His two adult children, 18 and 20, one of them, Chandler, have chosen not to have any contact with him. They don't want anything to do with him. Okay. And then there's the 5-year-old. Well, he's forbidden from contacting the 5-year-old because she is a witness to this crime. And we have talked about this before on the podcast. The complication, I've seen this where some judges have permitted contact. So one parent is accused of killing the other parent, okay? And then you have the children who are left like completely abandoned, right? Both your parents are not available to you. And how judges determine whether the children can or cannot be contacted, because one would think the child might need the surviving parent to maybe reassure them, which I know sounds crazy if they're charged with killing your parent, but it's such a complicated thing because I don't know what's right. To let parents contact the children. Clearly the 5-year-old can't be, but the 5-year-old is like, how does she process this? She's so young. She's so young.
I mean, listen, I'm not a big, when it comes to practicing, I stay as far away from family and matrimonial court as one can, because the issues that they have to deal with in there just generally are already tough enough. I have some good friends who are family court judges. And what I'll say, and what you already know, is that the standard in family court, when you're talking about custody and visitation, it's always going to be what's in the best interest of the child, right? And having to make that determination, I guess Brad could say at this point, like to your point, Anna, I'm presumed innocent. I haven't been convicted at this point. Sure, I've been indicted, but I haven't been convicted. It's still in my child's best interest to know who her father is and the parental support, no matter what I may or may not have done with respect to Suzanne. It's a tough decision for a family court just to say, absolutely not. I'm writing you out of the life of your daughter, even based on the terrible decision that you may have made with respect to her mother. It's just, that's a bench I wouldn't want to sit on. I don't like going in the courts, let alone thinking about sitting on that bench and having to make those decisions. But it's complicated. It's not just as easy as many people would just like for him to just be cut off from the 5-year-old, because the law it doesn't really permit that. And before you're like terminating parental rights, I mean, the showings that have to be made, the levels of abandonment that have to be shown, due processually, it's tough. So, yeah, I get the fact that she's a witness. So for that reason, he can't speak with her at this juncture. But to think that like communication will be cut off for all time or forever, or that he won't have rights to visitation, even potentially like while he's locked up, these are all things that remain in play.
The thing about the 5-year-old, and I know you have younger children, is, at that age, especially like 3 to 5-ish, children think that everything is because of them, that they have the power, right? Everything is based on them, that they can do things, meaning I'm wondering if this 5-year-old is internalizing and blaming herself that her father is in prison and she's alone because of what she told the person at school.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's a whole level of layers and nuance that
Yeah.
mm,
Because she's so young, she's 5, she apparently witnesses what could have even been the deadly blow to her mom. We don't know. So she witnesses her father hurting her mother, she says. That in itself is traumatic. And then if you think, because of what I told school, now
right.
daddy is in prison. I mean, that is a lot for a 5-year-old.
I mean, let me tell you, this morning I was dropping my 7-year-old off at school, and there's generally like a fork in this one road wherein you can take one way or the other way, and we can still end up at the school. And sometimes it really is a crapshoot as to which way is going to have more traffic. So my daughter told me to take the right path, right? So I'm like, whatever. I mean, we were on time this morning anyway, so I took the right path. We did end up in some traffic. And like when we ended up in the traffic, she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like I put us on this course. I'm like, Natalie, I'm the one driving. Like, I got it. I'm good. I could have went left. I went right all the time. But like, they'll internalize stuff like that. So when you're saying to like the level of, oh man, did I get my dad locked up and I don't have my mother anymore? That's torturous. Like all of Brad's controlling decisions and decision making. It's at another level of selfish because like, look what you put your kids in because of like whatever issues you felt you had with Suzanne. It was never worth this. I get it. He's presumed innocent. I'm a defense attorney. I get it. But I'm just saying circumstantially, it's not looking good. And if he did do it, come on, man.
So additional pretrial hearings in the murder case are set for January of next year. Trial date is scheduled for February. He faces charges of murder, tampering with evidence, and intent to impair a corpse, tampering, fabricating physical evidence with the intent to impair, and possession of prohibited weapons. While the search for Suzanne's body continues, at least some of Suzanne's children, they are living with brother Brad.
Okay.
So that's where the kids are. I can't tell you whether that's right or wrong. My gut is, I mean, it seems like Bart has shown himself to be a decent person who has wanted the right thing for Suzanne and would go against his brother and his family in order to do the right thing. However, when there is one family versus another, let's not forget the sister on the other side who's very upset here. Is there ever, I know family court's not your thing, but I don't do the children go with the accused's family? Do the children go with the victim's family? They're all family, but you see what I mean.
No, I see what you mean. And that's what I'm saying. The court has to make the assessment of just what's in the best interest. Who are the children closest with? Who's going to be able to make sure that they can get to school and make sure they're fed? And I mean, there's a lot of, factual evidence that generally has to come out in those hearings so the court can make a proper assessment. But yeah, to go live with the family of the accused, it's not as if it's just written into the law that could never happen, especially if that's the best situation for the children.
Mm-hmm.
All things considered.
All things considered, indeed. Bart told media outlets last December, "My brother's children are surrounded with love and caring and compassion and are doing as well as you can think you could for anybody in this situation." He also has not appeared at all to defend his brother, telling the media that Brad does not seem like the same person, and it has made me very sad. We will be watching this case. We are not going to have a comment section today because our producer, Will Updike, is on vacation. That's right. He's taking a break from us. A well-deserved break from us. However, as you know, I read your comments on YouTube, where we have a very active community, and I sometimes like to share your comments. So on our last podcast, Phillip, we had a very spicy guest. His name is Don Tabak, and Don is a former homicide investigator, and Don has no filter, and he really says it the way it is. He curses up a storm. He's like a salty sailor, and people love him.
Homicide investigators, I like that. Like anyone I've worked with, it's like it's a pedigree you have to have apparently to be able to do the work, but they're all like that.
And so the first time he came on a few months ago, everyone was like, "Oh my God, he's so refreshing, bring him back." So we brought him back, and well, he was on fire. And it was a very interesting case. It was a very sad case about a twin boy who was taken from his crib and then killed. And it was just horrible. And there's, cameras and baby monitor that witnessed that killer came back for the second child, but didn't get the second child. Anyway, Don was our guest, and many of the comments really were not about the case, but they were about Don. So I want to share them. So number.1 Cat Whisperer, writes, "I love Don. So happy he came back. I remember this case and glad this guy was caught. I remember when this was originally posted back when. Sorry that the coward took a plea, but glad that the family doesn't have to live through the details." Because sometimes we feel, this guy, he's on video, he kills this 4-year-old, and right before jury sentencing, he takes a deal which includes the possibility of parole, all to avoid the death penalty. And many people were just outraged at that. KLGM63 writes, "I'm disgusted that this guy was pled out and given possibility of parole. The judge that allowed this better lock his doors, because evil like this is everywhere." And then Melody Walker 3805 writes, "This case is so sad, heartbreaking, and disgusting. We need more Don. I love Don. We need more Dons in the judiciary system. Zero tolerance." So Don's a fireball. We'll have Don back.
Don.
He's different. He's very different. So Phillip, where can people find you and follow you? Social media, your law practice?
Well, we're still running the practice in the financial district of Manhattan, 48 Wall Street, if you're ever in the city. Across social media platforms, I am at ESQ Hamilton. ESQ Hamilton.
My favorite videos that you post on Instagram are the ones when you're driving to and from court. I don't know why. You're going over the bridge, you're driving downtown. I don't know. I feel like you just take me there along with you.
Well, Anna, thanks. Because sometimes, when you're practicing here, you forget that, when I was a child and I used to come to New York and visit my dad when he was here, and I would just look at the ooh and the ah and the lights and the bridges and all this and that. It was amazing. But then after a while, you're just here and it's just a part of the landscape, right? It's a part of this river I have to get over to get to court, this and that. But I think, sometimes just doing those recordings, it reminds myself oh, yeah, this is a magical place and it's a great place to practice.
Well, I love following you and also following your partner, Lance, and give him my best. You both are really special people. And I love how I find people on Instagram. I found some of the best attorneys on Instagram for this show.
We're out here.
I know. I love it. I love it. You can find me at Ana G News, Anna with one N. You can find everything that we do on social media at My True Crime News. Very simple. This episode, previous episodes of our podcast, including the one with Don, wherever you get your podcasts, or you can catch us on YouTube and you can watch Don in all his glory. Subscribe to our channel. Sign up to receive our newsletter at truecrimenews.com. So until next week, this is True Crime News, the podcast. I'm your host, Ana Garcia, and we remind you, crime never stops. And neither do we.